Chapter 17, The Last Request. Elder Mahen Dilo. It had been a mistake not to bring more than one horse with us. The Canelans were starting to pour into the streets. We had to get to the forest fast. Bombay had taken to holding my hand, a task that he had to do so that I would also be shrouded from Canelan eyes. The Nivens moved quickly, determined to reach Nivedan soon. From behind me, I heard gallops. "Ride with me, Elder," I heard a thick voice address me. "You too, Bombay." A hand gripped my cloak and guided me to where the horse was. Then I climbed up, finding it surreal to step up on something unseen. Bombay climbed after me, and we were squeezed in uncomfortably. The others have made their way past the forest to the secret passage, and they will find themselves in Nivedan before the sun sets. "We have to make our journey faster," he paused. "They will demand an explanation from us." An explanation was an understatement. "I need to talk to Andoni," I said. "The chief hunter is riding with Joros's body. 2 other Nivens escort them." "There is no need to inconvenience him further," he replied. "I have to talk to him. I am not certain if he will make it through the secret passage," I said urgently. I felt the Niven's body tense. "I feared as much, Elder," he said before adding, "Very well then." We trotted forward until we reached a place that was covered with thick bushes, tall trees, and thickets. Joros's body was tied to the horse as though it was baggage or goods to trade dangling from the side. Andoni had been hoisted down from the horse, and he was now in a sitting position on the ground with his back pressed against another Niven. His face was pale, and the hilt of the sword protruded from his chest. As I walked towards him, he managed a wry smile. I sat in front of him, barely taking my eyes off his face. His lips twisted as though he was hurting, and his eyes rolled upwards until all I saw were the whites. Sweat covered his face, and his body was starting to show the bruises that he gathered in his fight against the war general Rennerkalo. He was a legend, a master among swordsmen. I should have stopped Andoni from fighting the general. "Chief Hunter," I said in a low voice. Andoni struggled to open his eyes, and they flickered before resting upon my face. "Some days I win, but it isn't important because all it will take is for one moment to fall flat against my back, and I will lose, like the way I did today," he said sadly. "You fought bravely against a war general," I said earnestly. "No one has ever managed to win against him." He nodded in understanding. "But that's not important now, Elder. The ride will be rough, and when you get to my people, to Nivedan, they will ask you what has become of me. And this is the story you're going to tell." I shook my head. "No. You will survive this. You will reach Nivedan alive. The only thing that's keeping me alive is this sword piercing my body. If this were removed," he paused, and I nodded curtly in understanding. Andoni's eyes had gone watery, but no tears fell. "You will present them with Joros's body and convince them that everything's been kept secret. The palace does not know about our existence." "Why?" "It is more prudent to let them know about what happened. The repercussions of Canelan soldiers finding out about Nivens today will make them flock towards Nivedan again. If not now, then days after today. It could be weeks or months, but it will come. And soon," I said. "If Nivens do not ready themselves to fight against Canelan soldiers, then they will be wiped out the way the Emperor intended. Salvatore will know what to do. Tell him, and only him, the truth of what happened." "But the men who came with us? They saw everything." Andoni's eyes closed slightly as he drew in a deep breath. "They wouldn't speak about it. If I die here, the events they have seen will all die with me too." I stared at him, not understanding what he was saying. "Nivens have weird traditions. I am their leader. I cannot tell the people what happened. No one would dishonor my memory by opening his mouth to speak to the people what I should have, myself, been telling them. No, there is no danger. Listen to me. Only Salvatore has to know. He is more than fit to rule Nivens. It should have been him raised to chief hunter instead of me. Had it been him, maybe none of this would have happened. He will have a solution to all this," he continued. He gasped for breath, and I reached out to clutch at his head. The Niven who was helping Andoni into a sitting position paled as he watched the dying chief hunter. And Laren? What will I tell her? Tell her I am off to meet my friend in the sky, Andoni said feebly. She will know what I mean. My heart froze. It could not be like this. Andoni San Diego, the chief hunter, could not die. The Elders Guild needed the Nivens to fight against the Emperor. We should continue with the journey, I said. You will reach Niveton. Laren will meet you there. You will get to tell the story to Nivens. They need to hear from you about the dangers that we, are now facing. There's no need for me to relay the message to Salvatore. You can tell it to him yourself, I said. Andoni shook his head weakly. No. He smiled dejectedly. See my little girl to safety, he added. I stood up and started walking away, my heart tearing at seeing the chief hunter so weak. It could only be minutes now, an hour if he was lucky, before the gods took his spirit away. I have given you instructions, Elder Mahen Dilo. But I have a right to demand a last request, Andoni said thickly. I stopped in my tracks and looked back. I searched Andoni's face, questioning what it was that he wanted from me. I shivered. A last request, he had said. Bombay was standing beside me, tears grazing his face. His youth had not prepared him to stare death in the face. The four Nivens, Bombay included, and I watched Andoni. I do not deserve to die at the hands of a foreign man. It would dishonor me, he said. His eyes met mine levelly, and I did not have to ask what he would say next. I cannot, I said hoarsely. It is my last demand. A craving that I desire to be fulfilled. Chief Hunter, I am from a foreign land too. I am not accustomed to your ways. Renner Kalo's sword is not any different from any I own, and I do not have one, I said humbly. It is the hand that wields the sword, not the sword itself. Take his sword and end it for me, he commanded. I swaggered slightly, taken aback by his request. I shook my head. I can't. I glanced around at the Nivens surrounding me, their eyes measuring me. They looked away, eyes moist from unshed tears. I am not a Niven. If I wield the sword, you still die by a foreign hand, I said weakly. I did not want to end it for him. You are no longer a prisoner, Elder Mahen Dilo. By your courage and loyalty, having fought with us in the Canelan courtyard, you have shown yourself worthy of being called a Niven. We are taking you in. A partner, he said. The Nivens stared at Andoni and then at me. I shivered. Prepare me to receive the last embrace of the motherland, Andoni told the Niven holding him. The young Niven, Arlo, jerked as though he was slapped. He nodded reluctantly. He pushed Andoni to a kneeling position and gathered Andoni's hands to his back. I gasped at the way Arlo positioned Andoni. The chief hunter's head bobbed down, perspiration covering his scalp. Arlo glanced up, searching my face. The duty is now yours, Elder, Arlo said reverently. My knees shook with each step that I took towards Andoni. Upon reaching him, I crouched down and put both my hands on the sword's hilt. I gripped it tightly. This is going to hurt, I whispered to Andoni. With shaking hands, I pulled at the sword, and when it was released by Andoni's body, his head jerked upwards, only the white in his eyes showing. He gasped for breath raggedly. Then I lifted the sword. Andoni's eyes met mine one last time before his head sagged forward, waiting. All around me, I heard and saw nothing as I swung the sword towards Andoni's neck and hoped that in doing so, I had given him honor. The blade sliced through his neck cleanly, and his head rolled forward. It stopped inches away from my feet face up, its blue eyes glaring up at the equally blue sky.